You know what blows my mind? People out here saying late 2027 is too early for a PlayStation 6.
Those unforgettable experiences that really make the console feel complete. And we get to that point where we want that new hardware. We're tired of playing on the old hardware. You know what I'm saying? But that hasn't happened for this generation yet. And I don't think it's gonna feel that way even 2 years after I've recorded this video. It still feels like we've barely scratched the surface with the PS5. Like we've got a lot of unfinished business still.
Here are the biggest gaming leaks and news you've probably missed this week. So, here's the deal. The Blood of Dawnwalker, yeah, that new vampire RPG everybody's buzzing about, comes from Rebel Wolves, the studio co-founded by none other than Konrad Tomaskiewicz, the director of The Witcher 3. And you already know what that means. The moment people hear Witcher 3 devs, the comparisons start flying. Is it the next Witcher? Is it just Witcher with fangs? But here's the interesting part. Rebel Wolves doesn't seem worried about that at all. At Gamescom 2025, senior quest designer Patryk Widziałkowski basically told Games Radar Plus, look, we get it. People are going to compare us to The Witcher 3, but honestly, we're fine with it. That game's a masterpiece, and if we're being compared to something that good, we'll take it. But what we're doing with Dawnwalker, that's our own beast entirely. He even doubled down, saying this isn't about competing with CD Projekt Red. If anything, they want both studios to succeed. They're rooting for Witcher 4 just as much as the fans are. And I actually kind of like that take, because let's be real, yeah, Dawnwalker has that dark medieval fantasy vibe that screams Witcher energy, but Rebel Wolves is really leaning into making this their thing. We're talking hybrid combat that takes cues from Batman Arkham, For Honor, and Kingdom Come. We're talking a protagonist who's fun to play in both his human and vampire forms. And yeah, it's an open world with multiple biomes, but the team keeps stressing identity. This isn't Witcher 3.5. It's something fresh, with its own mechanics, its own voice. So the way I see it, people will always line the two up side by side. That's inevitable. But if Dawnwalker really delivers on this promise of being unique, those comparisons are going to fade fast. Instead of the Witcher guys making another Witcher, it'll be, oh damn, Rebel Wolves just dropped a whole new standard for dark fantasy RPGs.
Your wealth is ours. This is my lucky day.
So, Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon, just dropped its biggest update yet, patch 1.1. And man, this thing is packed. We're talking new game plus, new quests, a full transmog system, a reworked third act, pet upgrades, bug fixes, performance improvements, the whole deal. Basically, it feels like the devs went all in to make this the perfect time to jump back in. Or maybe even start fresh if you've been sleeping on it. Now, just to catch up anyone new, The Fall of Avalon is this dark, gritty, open-world RPG that lets you play first or third person, and it's a twisted reimagining of Arthurian legend. You're not Arthur, though. You roll your own custom character and go carve your own path. It's choice-heavy, multiple quest lines, different endings, the whole RPG package.
You're nothing but a peasant.
Let's start with New Game Plus. It's exactly what you'd expect. You reset the world, enemies get tougher, resistances go up, and your armor actually gets debuffed with every NG Plus cycle. You don't keep everything either. You lose your king's powers, recipes, keys, quest progress, stuff like that. But your progression, your build, your weapons and armor, that all carries over. And here's the kicker. All new loot and crafted gear in NG Plus is actually stronger. Plus, there's unique loot drops you can only find in these harder runs. So yeah, replay value just went through the roof. Next up, transmog. You ask, they listened. At the handcrafting station, or for free in your player home, you can now make your gear look however you want, as long as you've discovered the style. Basically, Fashion Souls, but for Avalon. It's one of those features you always want in an RPG, and now it's here. But here's where things get crazy. The devs went back and reworked a big chunk of Act 3, the Forlorn Swords. 6 new quests, a completely revamped Stone Warden ending, better loot, smarter enemies, and a big overhaul on the art and environments. You'll notice dungeons like the Gates of Knowledge and grindy low lair looking sharper than ever. And if you want specifics, 3 quests are tied to the Spine tribe, 3 more to the Ulfer tribe. So yeah, there's hours of fresh content just waiting for you in this patch. Another big quality of life change. Third-person view got an upgrade. Your character doesn't hunch over awkwardly anymore, whether you're on foot or on horseback. Remember, this game was designed around first person, so third person was always kind of a bonus feature. But honestly, after this patch, it feels way smoother to play. And then there's Quarko. If you know, you know. That weird little pet from Act 1 just got a glow up. Now you can feed it and unlock new forms, including turning Quarko into a mount, or even a summon. It's wild that something that used to be kind of a gimmick is now actually part of the gameplay loop. Now, I can't list every single tweak here, or we'd be here all day, but a few highlights. Armor is now capped at 95% for balance reasons. Head bobbing toggle has been added. Shops and stashes got bulk options. Over 120 new journal entries with lore and NPC notes. Console players, major RAM optimizations for stability. And then there's the new gear, which is honestly one of my favorite parts of this patch. You've got rings that reduce mana cost for summons, amulets that scale spell power with your level, daggers that boost backstab damage by 200%, bows that blind enemies, cloaks that instantly regen stamina, and even crazy hybrid gear like vambraces that turn your spell power into physical damage. It's all super creative and adds a ton of build diversity. That's just scratching the surface. I jumped back in on PS5 after this patch, and I'll be honest, I definitely see the improvements. The new quests are fun, the world feels more alive, and some of those annoying rough edges have been smoothed out. It really does feel like the devs listened and tried to push the game forward, but at the same time, it's not all the way there yet. I still ran into some stuttering issues, especially when the action heats up, and a few spots just don't feel fully optimized. Don't get me wrong. It's a way better experience than before, and if you've been waiting for an excuse to come back, this patch gives you that. But yeah, there's still some polishing left to do before it hits that great tier. Oh, and before I wrap this up, I'm dropping a little something for you guys. 2 game codes. One's for Steam and one's for PS5. They're up on the screen right now, so if you're quick, they're yours. Good luck snagging them. So here's the thing, Game Pass, as cool as it is for players, is starting to sound like a nightmare behind the scenes. First, we had Pete Hines from Bethesda saying, "Yo, without developers making these games, this service is worth nothing." And now, Shannon Loftus, a former Xbox exec herself, is basically saying the same thing, but with a lot more heat. She straight up called it out. Sure, Game Pass has saved a couple of games that might have sunk, like Human, fall flat, but for the most part, the adoption you see on Game Pass, it usually comes at the expense of retail sales, unless your game is built from the ground up to milk players with microtransactions after launch. And here's where it gets spicy. She says this creates these weird inner tensions for developers. And honestly, she's right. Imagine you work years on a game. It drops day 1 on Game Pass. Everyone plays it, praises it, but at the same time, your studio's actual sales revenue tanks. How does that make sense? Look at Hi-Fi Rush, critical darling. Fans loved it. One of the best surprises Xbox has pulled off in years. And yet, the studio gets shut down by Microsoft, only to be resurrected by Krafton later. Like, what are we even doing here? Is the metric success on Game Pass just a lot of people played it? Or does Microsoft still secretly care more about retail sales? Because if it's the latter, then this model isn't saving studios, it's killing them. So, here we go again. Ubisoft and Yves Guillemot back in the headlines, and not for the games. The Solidaires Informatiques Union, along with 4 individuals, just filed a summons against Guillemot himself. And get this, it's literally the same group that went after him in the trial that wrapped up back in June. Now, important detail, the public prosecutor's office already decided there's not going to be any criminal proceedings against Ubisoft or its leadership. That was confirmed during the closing arguments in June. So, on paper, Ubisoft's in the clear. But the union, they're not letting go. Ubisoft's EVP, Cécile Rousset, tried to put out the fire with the usual PR statement. You know the one. Our top priority is protecting employees. Zero tolerance for harassment, discrimination, insults, blah, blah, blah. It sounds nice. But let's be real. We've heard this before. And the fact that this summons exists tells you there are still people who don't believe the company has truly cleaned house. A union rep confirmed Guillemot was summoned last month, but apparently he just didn't show. Even crazier, his family was asked to stand in for him, and they refused. HR Director Marie Derain and Ubisoft itself, as a legal entity, have also been summoned. That's not a good look. Let's rewind for a second. Remember 2020, when the big reports of harassment inside Ubisoft first exploded? Back then, Guillemot said something along the lines of, "Some individuals betrayed my trust and didn't live up to Ubisoft's values," which, if you read between the lines, is basically him saying, "I didn't know anything, don't blame me." But 4 years later, people are still asking, what did he actually know, and when? Did he really have no idea? Or was this just about keeping distance while everything fell apart around him? Alright, so Sony just dropped something pretty interesting, the PlayStation Family app. And honestly, this is one of those moves that feels like, finally. Parents have been juggling console menus for years just to set limits, check what their kids are playing, or make sure little Timmy isn't buying $200 worth of Fortnite skins. Now, it's all on your phone. Here's the deal. The app basically gives parents a control panel for their kids' PlayStation Lite. You can set up a child account way easier now because it literally guides you through it. You'll get real-time notifications telling you exactly what game your kid just booted up. And if they hit you with that classic 5 more minutes please, you can approve or decline right from your phone. No running to the living room, no arguments in front of the TV. And the features are stacked. You've got activity reports, so you can see how much time they're spending on games, daily or weekly, straight up. You can set playtime schedules for each day, manage how much money they can spend on the PlayStation Store, even add funds or set monthly limits. No more surprise credit card bills. Plus, you can filter games by age, use presets for younger kids, and even manage their social interactions, like who they can talk to online. Now, the bigger picture here, this is Sony catching up. Microsoft already had the Xbox Family app. Nintendo's got their Switch Parental Controls app. So yeah, Sony was late to the party, but this one looks polished, and it's launching globally from day one. That's a strong statement. Alright, so let me throw a couple of questions out there for you. If you're a parent, would you actually use this PlayStation Family app, or do you feel like parental controls are just one more hassle? I mean, sometimes these tools sound good on paper, but in reality, do parents really stick with them? And what about the kids? Do you think they'll find ways around this stuff? Because let's be honest, most of us when we were younger always found a way to sneak in more playtime. If you grew up gaming, would you have hated your parents having an app like this back in the day? Another thing I'm curious about, who do you think actually does this better? Sony, Xbox, or Nintendo? Microsoft had their Family app for a while. Nintendo's had one, too. Do you think PlayStation is just catching up, or are they doing it better? You know what blows my mind? People out here saying late 2027 is too early for a PlayStation 6. Like, bro, that's 2 years away, too. And if you seriously think the PS5 isn't already at its limits, then stick around, because by the end of this video, I'm gonna show you exactly why that take is completely cooked. But let's back it up for a second. Is it too early to even be talking about the PlayStation 6? That's the question blowing up online. And honestly, I get why people are freaking out. We've barely gotten into the golden years of the PS5, and suddenly the internet's buzzing with leaks about a possible 2027 launch for Sony's next big console. It feels like you just finished climbing the mountain of supply shortages, scalpers, and price hikes to finally land a PS5, and now there's talk of moving on. Seriously, it's like getting invited to dessert when you've only just finished your appetizer. Exciting, but also kind of overwhelming. The fire started with a mix of leaks and insider whispers suggesting that Sony's already eyeing mid-2027 for the PS6's debut. Some reports even stretch it out to 2028 or 2029, but the idea alone has has gamers raising eyebrows. Why? Because the PS5 hasn't even reached its full stride yet. Sure, it launched in late 2020, but between the pandemic, chip shortages, and delayed exclusives, it feels like the console's life cycle only really started a year or two ago. So hearing PS6 makes people wonder if Sony's just sprinting to the next finish line before the current one's even warmed up. To really figure out if 2027 feels too soon, we've got to look back at how Sony usually handles these things. The PlayStation 2 launched in 2000, the PS3 hit in 2006, then PS4 in 2013, and finally the PS5 in 2020. That's roughly 6 to 7 years per cycle. If Sony follows the same pattern, a 2027 release actually lines up almost perfectly with their history. In fact, the PS4 had one of the longest runs before its successor showed up, stretching things to 7 full years. So maybe our sense of too early isn't about the math. It's about how slow the PS5 generation has felt to get rolling. The PlayStation 5 is finally standing tall in 2025. After a rocky start with shortages and delayed exclusives, it's now delivering the kind of experiences people expected from the jump. Spider-Man 2 set the stage with jaw-dropping visuals. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth brought cinematic storytelling to another level, and Helldivers 2 proved Sony could score massive wins even in the live service space. And the future looks even brighter, with Ghost of Yotei dropping this October, Wolverine lurking in the near horizon, and of course, the biggest cultural nuke of them all, GTA 6, arriving in 2026. If anything, PS5 feels like it's just starting to cook. And let's not forget, the PS5 Pro is already here. It launched last holiday season in 2024, giving players a beefier option with higher frame rates, ray tracing boosts, and better 4K consistency. That mid-gen refresh was designed to extend the PS5's life, not replace it. Here's my honest opinion. I don't get why people are so against the idea of moving forward. It's like half the internet just doesn't want technology to evolve. You've got YouTubers pumping out videos saying, "Oh, the PS5 barely got started." Really? Have you actually looked at what the console is doing compared to high-end PC hardware right now? Go peek at an RTX 4090 build and then tell me the PS5 isn't already hitting its ceiling. Let's be real. Visuals on PS5 aren't as crisp anymore. If you want a steady 60 frames per second, you're often stuck with an internal resolution that drops to 1080p. Fire up something like Cyberpunk 2077 with ray tracing on, and you're locked at 30 frames per second. Sure, screenshots look great, but TVs aren't getting smaller, they're getting bigger. People want sharp 4K, smooth 60 frames per second, maybe even 120 frames per second with ray tracing fully enabled. And the truth is, the PS5 just can't deliver that consistently. What makes it worse is that a lot of devs now lean on ray tracing, like it's the only trick in the book. Back on PS4, studios built stunning worlds using baked-in lighting and artistry, without relying on ray tracing. Some of those games still look gorgeous today, but now it feels like if you don't have RT, you're outdated, which is insane, because the hardware clearly can't carry it at the standard players expect. I saw idiots like Mudahar last year screaming at people, "What's the point of upgrading from PS4 to PS5?" And I'm just sitting there banging my head on the wall, like, a million reasons. It's 2025, and people still pretend these consoles have no games, or that you're stuck playing old-gen leftovers. And I'm like, hey, those PS4 games on PS5? Yeah, they look like PS5 games. That's how ahead of their time Sony's exclusives were. There is no game I want to go back and play on a PS4 right now. Ghost of Tsushima, God of War 2018, Spider-Man 2018. They all run at 4K, 60 FPS on PS5. The first thing I did when I bought mine was boot up all my PS4 games, and people said, "What's the point? Hey, what's the point of upgrading from an RTX 2070 to an RTX 5070 with 16 gigs? Everything." What do NVIDIA gamers love to do on their shiny new GPUs? Boot up Half-Life 2 with path tracing at 300 frames per second, 4K DLSS frame gen, all the bells and whistles. Like, what are these people smoking, man? Really? And let's not forget, PS5 has been out for 5 years now. 5. People act like late 2027 is too early for PS6. Brew, that's 2 years away. Discs are dead. Or at least, that's the writing on the wall after the latest PS6 news. Sony just confirmed the next console will be digital only, with a disc drive sold separately, and people are pissed. Well, they confirmed it internally, and it has been leaked by the biggest leakers out there. People like Jeff Grub, Henderson, and Moore's Law is dead. are already confirming this. And honestly, I get it. Physical games are part of the culture. Owning a disc feels permanent. It feels safe. But here's the thing. Sony's not making this decision blind. They're looking at the numbers, and the numbers say they can absolutely get away with it. Let's rewind. In 2023, 70% of all full PlayStation game sales were digital. By 2024, that number jumped to 76%. And in just the first quarter of 2025, Sony reported a staggering 83% digital. That's 8 out of every 10 games being downloaded. Physical discs are barely holding on. And if we break it down by PS5 specifically, the story's the same. In the US, 78% of PS5 game sales are digital. In Europe, it's about 68%. That still leaves a slice of players buying physical, but it's shrinking year after year. Even when you look at Sony's full game unit sales across PS4 and PS5 combined, the split is brutal. In fiscal year 2023, out of almost 286 million games sold, about 200 million were digital. In fiscal year 2024, 303 million games sold and more than 230 million were downloads. And just this year, in Q1 alone, about 55 million digital games versus only 11 million physical. That's how fast this is flipping. Now, think about the PS5 Slim. That model came with a detachable disc drive. Digital first, physical optional. That was Sony testing the market. And the data since then basically gave them the green light for PS6. Physical isn't gone completely. Collectors can still buy the add-on drive. But for the average player, Sony knows they're downloading everything anyway. Man, it's been way too long. Like seriously, in case you forgot, Fairgame first popped up back on May 24th, 2023. That's over 2 years ago now. And what did we get? A CGI trailer. Yeah, not even gameplay, just a flashy little cinematic. The whole pitch seems simple enough though. An extraction shooter, teams of 3 or 4, sneaking into billionaire penthouses and vaults, grabbing as much loot as you can before other crews crash the party. They showed off a few gadgets, some goofy, non-lethal weapons, and of course, random goons in monkey masks. And yeah, I'll be real, it wasn't exactly groundbreaking. The setup felt fine, but the timing, brutal. PlayStation dropped this during a showcase where people were already tired of their live service obsession, and leading the show with this, people were like, come on, really? Are we seriously doing this? And the comment sections? Oh, they lit that thing on fire. You had people clowning on it with lines like, want to see me lose 400 million? Want to see me do it again? Or Sony sweating nervously through the screen. And of course, eat the rich. $800 console without a disc. The whole thing just came across as cringy, out of touch, trying way too hard to be edgy. Like, I get it, the devs themselves aren't billionaires, but when you're making this game for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it just feels fake. People could smell the irony from a mile away, and yeah, it was embarrassing. Since then, silence. Nearly 2 years of nothing. Until earlier this year, when the co-founder Jade Raymond suddenly left. No goodbye tour, no heads up to her own team. Just an email, she's gone. That's it. If you're leaving on good terms, you let people know. You do a farewell week. This looked like either frustration boiling over or a straight up boot out the door. And reports started trickling in that poor playtests might have been the reason. Not a great look. And then, just when you think it couldn't get weirder, rumors hit that the game might be canceled. Which, let's be honest, if people believe that instantly, without hesitation, it probably means your project just isn't exciting anyone. Eventually, Haven had to come out and say, no, it's not canceled. But the damage was done. And now the latest? Their game director, Daniel, just bailed. 4.5 years on this project, and he suddenly leaves to go work at Warner Bros. Montreal. He didn't take a break, didn't sit around unemployed. No, he lined up a new gig, locked it in, then dipped. That screams lack of confidence. If your own game director doesn't believe in the project enough to stick around for launch, why should anyone else? Game directors don't just abandon ship right before release unless they know the ship is sinking. This isn't the first time we've seen something like this. Remember Marathon losing its director? Assassin's Creed Valhalla's guy getting kicked out months before launch? Those games at least limped to the finish line. But here, founder gone. Game director gone. That's a 1-2 punch. And when your top people stop believing, what does that say about the game itself? Honestly, I don't know how this thing is still alive. Sony keeps throwing money at it like it's a sunk cost they can't admit to. Meanwhile, live service games can't just be okay. They have to be great. They need to hook players for years. Fairgame Fairgame Dollars hasn't even made it to the starting line, and already its leadership is bailing. And look, even Concord managed to at least exist. People didn't like it, but it shipped. This one feels like it's falling apart from the inside. If you've got Jade leaving after playtests bomb, and now the director straight up quitting after 4 years, that says it all. Imagine how bad those playtests must have been to break everyone's confidence like that. And if Daniel really thought this was gonna pop off, he'd have stayed. You don't leave the next Helldivers 2 right before launch. You stick around to enjoy the success. Him leaving tells me it's the opposite. He saw the iceberg ahead and decided to jump ship. So what happens next? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Sony quietly cans it. We might just never see Fairgame Dollars again. At best, Haven shifts into some back-end support studio building dev tools because clearly the game side isn't clicking. Sony's leadership keeps insisting they can cancel games early and cheap, but come on, this thing is the exact opposite. They're burning piles of cash to keep it alive when everything screams, let it die. And the irony? They stumbled into Helldivers 2 being the live service hit they always wanted, while forcing stuff like Concord and Fairgame $sign down everyone's throat. At the end of the day, PlayStation execs are obsessed with finding their golden goose. They'll waste money on failures as long as one success pays for the rest. But man, Fairgame $sign looks cooked. Studio founder gone, director gone, audience checked out. This game feels like it's just waiting for Sony to finally pull the plug.